This is All Hitches, the Nova Football Podcast.
Yo, tune in, lock in, it's the All Hitches show. Dash and Dan on the mic, let the Nova tales flow. From the booth to the field, we hitch up the truth. All Hitches podcast, drop the beat, here's the proof. Dash and Dan in the cut, bringing heat to the game.
All right, welcome back to All Hitches, Nova's #1 football podcast. Coach Mesa, how you doing, buddy?
I feel like I'm in a fever dream where you're like walking along, you're like, man, it's really hot outside. And then you turn around and you're like, man, it's weird, it's Christmas.
We saw 4 seasons in 12 hours. 12 hours.
You're Mr. Virginia. Is that par for the course or what?
No, I've never seen that before. I mean, it was like 78 degrees still, like at midnight.
Yeah.
And then at that point, it gets cold and it starts snowing. It was a freaking blizzard, it looked like.
Yeah.
I mean, it was bad.
Yeah, I don't think I've ever experienced it. Well, you said it was unprecedented, so I thought maybe it happens here before, but I was like, how do you have a 50-degree difference within 12 hours?
Crazy.
That was wild.
And then the wind. Has been pretty bad.
Yeah.
Just wild weather, man.
And it's not an autumn wind either.
It is not an autumn wind, and the Raiders, I just read the Raiders might file a grievance. They might file a grievance, buddy.
Speaking of, your boys had a pretty good week, huh?
They did have a good week.
You guys are winning the offseason right now.
We are. Baltimore tried to ruin it, but you know what? It's okay. It's okay. You saw Max Crosby. He said, "I'm back," and he said, "I'm good.
Yeah.
I'm good. I'm gonna retire Raider," and that's got to be humbling, though, right? And I feel like they have like put out bad intel on him, like, "Oh, this guy's not going to last very long with his knees the way they are," and he's like, "What do you mean?
Yeah.
You guys just don't want to pass me. They're going to pass. Trey Hendrickson's going to pass his physical because they're allowing him to pass his physical."
Yeah. I mean, I guess I don't know. I mean, it was just weird overall.
The whole thing was weird.
Yeah.
Buyer's remorse. People get it for houses all the time, and cars. You usually don't see it in free agency as much.
Yeah.
It's crazy. It's absolutely wild. Now, almost as wild, almost as crazy as some of the controversy we've heard coming out of the VHSL, my friend.
Yeah, so there was a thing with Manor basketball about a player who was ruled ineligible. It's a girls' basketball, if I'm not mistaken, right? Then went to court and ruled eligible, and everyone was like, "Oh, see, the VHSL transfer rules are falling apart," and that's actually not what the case was about. The rule that VHSL declared her originally ineligible with was never actually challenged in court. They didn't challenge that in court at all. What actually was challenged was the way that rule was enforced. Essentially, what happened was in the Manor High School used what VHSL deemed an ineligible player in the Region 4A playoffs. She came here. She went there from a Norfolk Academy. And what happened was Manor's athletic department failed to submit the waiver and she had for the postseason waiver, right? So I don't know. Maybe there are DSAs who can explain this a little better, but just off of my understanding is you had to do a postseason waiver. The reason because she came in December.
Right.
She moved in the middle of the year, so she came in December. The school then self-reports this.
It's self-reported.
It's self-reported, and VHSL says they have to forfeit the game and then end their season. It ends up going to the Portsmouth Circuit Court. Their attorney argued that the violation was a paperwork error and not a competitive misconduct. So there's a difference, and that VHSL handles without due process. So essentially, what the court says is that VHSL has to give them due process before you deem them ineligible, which I think kind of makes sense, right? You can't just flash and do that, especially when what the judge essentially rules is that had they filed the paperwork correctly, she just would have been eligible because they followed the rules. It was just because they didn't follow the rule.
Right.
So
she didn't do anything. She didn't do anything shady. Right.
She didn't do anything shady. The problem was due process.
Right.
The problem was not, look at the game with cheating. No, the problem was that they didn't give her due process,
right.
Which you can argue VHSL has done a lot of in the past few years. Now, when you're talking about the playoffs, I guess you think to yourself, there's not a lot of time to do that.
That's what it was. They didn't want to pause the playoffs.
Right. They didn't want to pause the playoffs, which I think was it West Virginia a few years ago where like they kept on having to pause the playoffs over and over again.
Maybe.
It was somewhere around here, right?
Yeah.
Um,
Well, almost here 2 years ago.
yeah. And so the other larger issue at hand is that uh, while VHSL is a nonprofit, because they technically represent public schools, are they an arm or an agent of the state government? Right? So that's kind of the larger issue again at hand is that at that point then do you have constitutional protections because you're technically the ruling body is just an extension of the state, right? And so yeah, this goes back to a Supreme Court case that went before the Supreme Court, Brentwood Academy versus Texas Secondary School Athletic Association. And essentially, the Supreme Court said that because they are technically made up by public schools, they technically are an arm of the government, and so constitutional rights applied there as far as due process and everything like that.
So I mean, so that the headlines were a little deceiving.
Yeah.
Right. People like the sensationalism.
Yeah,
right?
and I think we live in an age now where nobody reads the actual article.
Yeah.
It just says player rule eligible is eligible again. And it was like, see, right. And they don't actually go to read it. And even if you read the article, I mean, I had to get a little, I had to take off my podcast coaching hat and put on my old school history.
Yeah, you were digging deep. You were like Indiana.
Yeah. So and so I started looking at it a little better, and I'm like, shut up. Like, I don't know.
Right.
I mean, people want to say things, and
yeah, it reminded me of when you're telling the story. Reminded me of the other headline from like a month ago,
yeah.
where people said VHSL that anyone could transfer to any school. Remember that one?
Yeah.
And people read that one wrong.
Right.
You know, so like it's incorrect. I mean, it's just incorrect. And they did things about the right way. Like they said, they it was legit. It was a bona fide move.
Yeah. And the problem was just a paperwork error.
There was a clerical paperwork error. That's it. That's all there was. And the judges recognized that, and they saw that.
Right.
That's it. And the story.
Yeah, and I think another problem is that VHSL now I think is very reactionary in that they're overreacting to things where common sense, right? Common sense says, no, the kid was eligible. Someone didn't file the paperwork. Hey, don't do that, right? I mean, it should have been a hey, finger wag at him, right?
That's right.
Don't do that again. This kid was eligible. Had they just filed the paperwork correctly, none of this would have been an issue. It was, yeah, and there was never a challenge of the kid being. So maybe there was a thought that they improperly.
Right, there was some kind of like shenanigans that nobody could prove.
And so maybe that's the route that they went.
Right.
But it was a bona fide move in December, and
if you can't prove it, you should know going into it, man. Don't even try it.
Yeah, and it does happen, right? I mean, kids do move.
Yeah, right.
In the middle of school year, I mean, it does happen. So
right.
And actually looking at it, I think she came. Let me look at this again. Hold on, because the school
Norfolk Academy, right?
Norfolk. So that was actually. Let me look that up. Because I didn't look up if it was a private school.
Okay.
So let me look right now.
Well, Norfolk Academy, yeah, I think it is.
Yeah, it's a private school.
It is.
And then Manor is a public school, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, I don't know. Miss me with all that. Please. I mean, people are so they just want I don't know. And I think people love controversy, right?
They do. People like controversy. They everybody remembers the big to do from like almost 2 years ago now, right? With all that stuff and VHSL going to court and all that. And I think everyone's kind of thinking there's a continuation off of that, and it had nothing to do with any of that stuff.
Right.
So yeah, so I knew you'd be on the case, buddy. All you needed was your fedora, and your little Clark Kent fedora, little press ticket in there.
Yeah. I just. But so everybody out there who's all up in arms, oh, see, the VHSL is toothless. No, it's not it. It was a paperwork error, and all this goes away if they don't. I don't know. I mean, do you feel like VHSL now is quick with the trigger, whereas in the past it'd have been like it's a paperwork error. What are we talking about here? The kid went from a private school to public school.
Right.
My guess is probably even didn't move, right? Because I couldn't find that out. It just says a transfer or just left. Probably lived in that district, right? And just went to their home school.
Yeah, I mean, we don't know the details, but that's what it sounds like.
But
Nobody wrote anything otherwise.
wouldn't you just want your kid who lives in a private school to just come to your? I mean, and I'm sure you're gonna have people who are gonna be like, well, no, what's gonna happen is that
Yes,
a kid who goes to O'Connell,
right.
they're in the playoffs, and so they're just gonna come and play for whoever.
They come back and go play for Westfield, whoever, right?
They're gonna go to Langley, right? A lot of O'Connell kids live in McLean, right? They're gonna go to Langley. They're gonna go. They're gonna show up out of nowhere. I mean, maybe I don't know. I feel like sometimes we complain about things that happen like 1 in 100 times. And what are we talking about?
Right.
I mean, yeah, I don't know. But everybody wants to get up in arms because everybody wants to. Everybody has a side, and they want to argue on that side, right?
But I guess that was part of it, and I don't know, man. I guess I would need the big, thick, book of all the rules. But wasn't part of it if you were a transfer like that, even if it was bona fide, wasn't part of the punishment you missed the playoffs? Is that what it was?
I think so. But,
I mean, is that what they were challenging essentially?
No, well, my understanding is that they were challenging the paperwork. And also they weren't challenging it. They self-reported.
Right.
They came in and said, "Hey, mea culpa," right? We screwed up.
Right.
Right. I mean, that's what happened. We screwed up. We didn't file the paperwork on time. However, they found that out, and they're like,
"Is that a DSA's always trying to save their butt?"
Maybe.
I just feel like I'm trying to unpeel the onion a little bit.
I mean, that's what I found.
Hey, maybe there's an all 3-pointers down there that breaks it all down.
Also, she was never informed of her appeal rights. They never told her, and essentially what the judge says was, and actually I think the actual ruling, she says in her judgment, adults made a mistake, but the athlete ends up being punished. The girl didn't do anything wrong. She didn't do anything wrong.
Right.
There was an adult who didn't do that, and we can't punish that kid for the fact that adult, she didn't.
Right. At the end of the day, if it all could have been resolved with filing something, because that's what the judge said, right? Isn't that what everyone agreed upon? That if a certain paper was filed, everything would have been okay.
Right.
Then.
Right.
It should be all right then. Let it follow, like you said. Let them.
And the other problem is that she also said that BHSL did not follow their own handbook in this.
Oh.
They had to. So my guess is, and again, this is a once in a blue moon thing that happens where a kid transfers mid-year and then ends up going to the playoffs.
Right.
Right. So.
Yeah. Well, like I said, and I tweeted it when it happened, but to be continued.
Yeah.
To be continued. We'll see. It'll all play itself out, buddy. And we'll be here.
We'll be here.
To talk about it.
And we have something else to talk about.
Yes, we do. Friend of the show. Friend of ours.
Good guy.
Great guy.
One of our favorite guys, I have to say.
Was doing good things at Oakton. Yeah. And kind of they ended a little prematurely, right? That's probably fair to say.
Yeah.
And he's taking his what did LeBron say? I'm taking
his talents.
He's taking his talents to Arlington.
And and I know there were, they had last year what they probably deemed a disappointing season. They were a minute away from being South Lakes and being in the playoffs.
Yeah.
Last year they were 2 yards away from beating Centerville and being in the playoffs. Like they were.
You and I've talked about this
right there.
When you talked about this with about Coach Slay's job at Oakton. First of all, getting the job now at Wakefield, which congratulations to Coach Slay, congratulations to Wakefield.
Yeah.
We've spoken about this, you and I, a lot, and they weren't going to beat Colonial Forge.
No.
I mean, I'm sorry. We love Oakton.
Yeah.
Colonial Forge was dominant.
Well, everyone thought it was going to be Colonial Forge and Oscar Smith for the title.
They weren't beating them. They weren't beating Madison. They played Westfield close, but they weren't beating Westfield last year.
Centerville.
What am I missing here? Centerville.
Yeah.
It was an all-time Centerville team.
Yeah.
There's 4. And the one they should have, maybe.
South Lakes.
There's 5. And I feel like I'm missing one. Langley had a great season.
Langley had a great season. Now I'm sure they got took in the woodshed, but Langley beat
Fairfax.
Fairfax.
Beat a couple good teams. Look, they, like you said, the only game that was close that you could have flipped a coin on was what do you say, the South Lakes game?
Well, and here's a 3-1, and I don't want we should probably move off this, but here's a 3-game stretch. Lost 24-21 to South Lakes, 29-25 to Westfield, and they beat Chantilly. So yeah, there was 2 games right there.
Two. You could flip the 2. So the realistic ceiling was only 2 more wins than they got.
6-4, and yeah.
And against 2 really, really good teams last year.
Yeah.
A South Lakes team that should have beat Battlefield, and a Westfield team that went really far into the playoffs.
Yeah.
So that's just proving our point. He's a good coach. He's doing good things. And Wakefield, lucky to have him.
Yeah, 100%.
And he could turn things around over there. That's the kind of coach that I think they've been waiting for.
Yeah, no, I agree.
Coach Clarence Martin, one of my good buddies, he's now in the athletic office. Man's got an eye for talent. He knows what he's looking for in a coach. He knows what it takes. He spotted, Coach when it went against Coach Slay.
Yeah,
when he was at the D coordinator at McLean.
And Slay knows the Liberty.
Right.
He's been there, so
good hire.
Yeah, 100%. Yeah. We're pulling from. We pull for everybody, but
yeah.
Coach
so there we are. So that's it. At 1, and then there was 1.
Yeah.
2 years in a row.
2 years in a row. There's kids. Yeah.
Now we did get word that the process is going.
Something's happening.
Yeah, something's happening, and hopefully sometime soon, they should have a big announcement.
Yeah.
So, unlike the other ones, we have no idea. Got to give them credit, Mesa. They're keeping that thing tight.
They are
tight.
Yeah.
No rumors coming out.
Actually, yeah. Although we heard some rumors early, but
early, that was it.
But now we know those rumors aren't true because those people are other places.
Yes, that's right. So it'll be fun. And then this is it. And I don't foresee any jobs opening up. This is it. We're in mid-March.
Yeah.
This is it. We got spring.
Any PW jobs? I don't think any PW jobs.
No, this is it. Now, the one that popped up was Colonial Forge.
Oh, that's right. Colonial Forge.
Colonial Forge popped up. Now, I don't know. There's no way they've done. That's only been a week.
There's a Stafford guy who I think would be really good for that job.
But I think he lives in Fairfax now. It's a tough gig, man, to drive up there.
That's going against traffic.
It is going against traffic. It's going against traffic.
Against traffic. It's going the other way.
It's a ways, buddy. It's a ways against traffic.
It's a ways, but
and North Stafford's coach just left.
Yeah, along with
saw that.
Everybody else.
I know. Jeez. Too soon?
Maybe.
Too soon. Yeah. You think that's what it was? He was like looked around and was like, damn.
They were feeling a very big team to begin with, right?
Yeah.
Only 2 levels. They didn't have a lot of guys. A lot of guys both ways.
He's like, looked around. That was a great season they had. Time to go. So congrats to him on his success, Coach Hall.
Well, he turned that place around, so
yeah.
Maybe he ends up at Colonial Forge.
Right. He can write his own check wherever he's going.
Yeah. He had a pretty good season.
Yeah, great season.
They're state finalists.
Yeah. And I'm glad you said that. I'm very glad you said that, buddy, because we're bringing a state finalist, a many-time state finalist on the show today, buddy.
Arguably if not the best, one of the best coaches right now in the northern region. Maybe
for sure. He's I'm a big Bill Parcells. He's Bill Parcells. He's one of the best coaches right now in the area. The man, has won, should have won. Listen, you and I have talked about this on this show, on the air, ad nauseum. He probably should have 2 rings in the last 2 years.
He should, yeah. And if he has those 2 rings, we don't have to hear about, Northern Virginia is terrible. They can't figure it out.
Right. No one's writing.
I'll tell you right now, Oscar Smith wants nothing to do with those guys.
Right. Neither their parents.
Yeah.
Right? They are the living embodiment of like Rocky,
They are.
right? Like the original Rocky,
They are.
right? You feel like they kind of won the match both times, but they technically they didn't. But you feel like they did.
It's that look, right? It's the look where he knocks Rocky down, right? And Apollo Creed looks up, he thinks the fight is over.
Right.
He turns around and
Yes. And then afterwards, Oscar Smith was like, ain't gonna be no rematch. Ain't gonna be no rematch. And we love Rocky, the Rocky movies here. Part 2 might have been better than part 1. There are some people that say, Coach Hendo used to say it, he preferred 2-1.
yeah, but everyone does because everyone wanted Rocky to win.
Yeah, but they're both still movies, gritty. They didn't become superhero movies until 3.
Yeah.
Rocky became a superhero in part 3, and then he was a superhero the rest of the way. 1 and 2 are more like realistic, gritty dramas.
Yeah.
He had the jacket with a tiger on the back. I think I might get that jacket.
You should get that
I
jacket.
should get that jacket. I mean, maybe we should get that jacket for Coach Counts, because that's who's on today, and we're really excited to have him.
Yeah.
It's a coaching clinic.
It is.
It's a coaching clinic. I think everyone's going to enjoy. Sit back, parents, players, coaches, anyone I'm forgetting, grandparents, anyone who loves the game of football. Sit back, listen to this man. The man's got a wealth of knowledge. Fun interview.
Yeah.
All right, here we go. Coach Counts of Madison High School. All right, here we are. We got Coach Counts from Madison. Coach, welcome aboard. This is 2 years in the makings here on the show.
Yeah, thank you guys. Appreciate you having me.
It's awesome you're coming on. So we brought you on because we wanted to get your opinion on the new bats that are coming out right now. I know you're a big baseball guy.
Yeah, right.
I've seen some videos of some of those bats they have coming out right now. Holy smokes, those things are weapons.
Yeah, I know they've done a lot in the last 10 years of trying to pull them back, and now I think they're starting to let people get a little bit more loose with them. It's I know these kids are paying $400 or $500 for a bat, which is crazy. I mean, we look down the dugout, we got about $5,000 worth of equipment sitting there. But yeah, I mean, pretty soon they're just going to make them so they hit for you. You just push a button and there it goes.
Yeah, I was talking to Wilkie, one of the baseball coaches there.
Sure.
And I was saying I asked him, do you think they ever go to the wood bats? And he was like, there's too much money invested now in these bat companies. There's no way they're gonna let them because they make so much money off them. There's no way they'll ever allow, or they'll figure out ways to make sure that the wood bats don't come back into play.
Yeah, and I think it's harder. The wood bats will break, so the kids got to buy a bunch of them. But I remember when I played 100 years ago, we had just team bats. We carried a team bat bag. We had like 4 or 5 bats. Now everybody's got 1 or 2 of their own. They all come in like they're going for a week-long vacation with as much stuff as they're dragging into the dugouts. I mean, it's crazy. You can't find a place to sit down anywhere because everybody's their stuff piled up.
Metal Eastons, right? Everyone had an Easton, right? Everyone just had a great Easton bat.
Yeah, you had the Black Magic and you had the Green Easton, and I think those were the only 2 bats that there were.
And it reminds me, you say doing it themselves. It reminds me of like Caddyshack. He pulled the club out, the Magic Club. And that's what the bats are going to be.
Yeah, they got the radios in there, like the golf bag there, and they just fire it up and let's play.
Well, speaking of baseball, and we're talking about your background earlier. Talk to the audience a little bit about kind of your voyage coming up. And I know you said you were a baseball player back in the day, and let's hear a little about Coach Counts' background.
Sure. Well, I went to Marshall High School in Falls Church, and I was really fortunate at the time period that I went through there. We had some great coaches. Coach Callahan and Coach Skinner were the football coaches at the time. Coach Sisler was the baseball coach, and we had a lot of great assistant coaches. The Bendorfs came through there around that same time. Coach Wells, who was at Oakton for a long time. Coach Folio was at Marshall about that time. So we had some great coaches in all the sports, and I played for some great guys who really inspired me. When I finished up playing baseball, I started coaching at Madison with Pudge there in 2000, and so I've been there ever since coaching baseball. When Coach Schultz was hired at Madison to be the new football coach in 2012, There were some people who were a little bit concerned about his ability to handle kind of the paperwork and all the other things associated with being a head football coach. They knew he could handle the football part of it. So they asked Pudge to help him, kind of guide him and work through that process. So Pudge helped for a couple years, and he brought in some of the coaches that are still on the staff now, me being one of them. And so that's how I got involved with football at Madison, and I've been there since. And then when Coach Schultz passed away, we were kind of looking for somebody to keep what he had been building in place. He passed away maybe 30 days before the season was going to start. And, we thought we had a good thing going. We were really getting, the kids invested in the weight room. We had a program, where everybody was kind of on the same page, and we were all preaching from the same hymnal. And we just wanted to keep that going. So I stepped up. My wife encouraged me to do that. I stepped up to do that. So we were able to keep our coordinators in place and most of the staff in place, and try to make that transition as easy for the kids in that really difficult time. And so they hired me as kind of the interim coach, and I did that for a year. And I thought that, I was really proud of what we did that year. I mean, it was obviously a really tough circumstance, and I thought that we did a really good job of kind of keeping to Coach Schultz's vision and keeping the staff and everybody on board. So they offered me that job to kind of stay. And I really had no plans of being a head football coach. I've been an assistant baseball coach, and I enjoyed that. And I have a bunch of kids that I was kind of chasing around at the same time. So I knew I had a lot of responsibilities, but my wife encouraged me to do it. And so I've just been there ever since. A lot of the guys have kind of stayed with me and kind of helped build this and like in the vision that Coach Schultz had. And I've put my own little, pieces that I picked up along the way from the great coaches that I had and the things that I thought influenced me as a high school aged kid. But really have stuck to the vision of what Coach Schultz had for our program and trying to keep everybody involved and doing things his way.
Yeah. And you said Marshall. So you were a Marshall guy. Now I'm Nova my whole life, and I didn't know. So Marshall's part of, I always saw Marshall, and I'm going to probably ruffle some feathers from some people here, but I always saw Marshall as an extension of Falls Church, kind of McLean. But I've been told in the last couple of years that Marshall's a big part of Vienna, and that Madison-Marshall rivalry is actually like huge.
Yeah, I don't know what the percentages are, but where I lived, that whole section of Vienna, it was, 22182 was the zip code. We all went to Marshall, and it was a long bus ride. I was probably closer to South Lakes where I live, but we all went to Marshall. And so everybody that I grew up with playing in Vienna Little League or Vienna Youth, anything, it was a big split. So I know what the rivalry looks like from both sides. I do think it's important. It's an interesting rivalry. I don't feel like it's since we're not in the same conference and the same district and everything, I think it's lost a little bit of its vitriol, but I do think it's, you want to be able to walk around town knowing that you won that game or whatever sport. And so I think we get big crowds in all the sports. It's really good. The town of Vienna is really good at supporting both programs. So I think anytime we get to play them in anything, it's always a good atmosphere, a good environment, and it's pretty healthy competition.
So you talked a little about Coach Schultz and kind of what you guys were building over there at Madison, but before his unfortunate passing, and you kind of took over. So what are some things that he? I mean, you have a lot of coaches, right, who are coming into programs who are trying to kind of emulate what you guys do over there and just kind of the way you guys do things. What are some of the things that he implemented that really kind of made this culture of that is Madison football?
Sure. Well, I mean, there's a couple things. I think number one is that, and this is something that our school does really well. We share athletes among sports. I mean, we really encourage kids to play as many sports as they can. I think we get great support from the other programs in our building, encouraging kids to play. So we have a lot of baseball players. We have a lot of lacrosse players. We have a lot of wrestlers. We have a lot of kids that football probably isn't even their primary sport. And we've been real open in inviting, anybody who wants to participate in the program to come out. We don't cut anybody. Everybody makes the team. Everybody has a role, and we try to keep everybody involved. So we've been great at getting the athletes in our building to come out and play football. I think number two, we've had a commitment to the weight room and the off-season program where people really take pride in it. Obviously, anybody who's playing another sport, we encourage them to do that. But if they're not playing another sport, the expectation is that they're going to be in with us working and doing the things that they need to do. I think we've been real committed to that. I think the kids are competitive in that. So we kind of push each other, and we've had great success kind of building a enough kids that can survive a high school football season. I think we made a commitment. For us, I thought it was a big deal. We made a commitment probably 4 or 5, shoot, it might even be more than that now. We lost to Westfield in the regional semifinal, Coach Schultz's last year. And we had probably 4 or 5 kids that were playing both ways at that time. And we had a great team. I think we were maybe 9-1 or 10-0 going into the playoffs. And we ran the Westfield team ended up winning the state championship, but we had a really good team, and we got dinged up there at the end of the year. And when we start losing those guys who are playing both ways, and we're putting those guys in positions, we're losing, you're losing 2 position players when somebody gets hurt. So we made the decision as a staff that we were going to develop enough players that we weren't going to try to play anybody both ways. And for us, that takes a lot. There's some guys you say, man, I really could use him. This guy would be great, but we just didn't do that. We stayed away from that. And we thought what that did in our program was it made us, number one, develop more players to play. Guys are on the field, so more people understand that they have an opportunity to get out on the field. And we tried to make sure at our lower levels that anybody who completed practice all week got in the football game, particularly on the freshman level. They've got to play. If they practice all week and they go through, as long as the coach doesn't feel like it's a injury risk, they've got to get in the game. And that's a mandate that we've given our younger teams. Even on the JV level, we try to make sure everybody gets in the game. Again, it's not quite as much open playing time, but we want everybody who's in the program to get on the field and get a taste of it and feel what it's about. And if that's something they want to work towards, playing varsity football. So we've done really good, I would say, at fostering an environment where the kids want to be a part of it. The fact that we've had some success makes it kind of the cool thing to do at school. So it's a little bit easier to convince some kids to do that, but we've got them in the weight room. We've got them working hard, and they want to be a part of it. So now we're getting young kids coming to the games who think, when they grow up, they want to be Madison football players. And that goes, so we're getting great turnout in the 9th grade, and it's kind of built upon itself. As long as you got the numbers, I think you get the kids to buy into work, and you're going to be able to put enough kids out there to put a pretty good product on the field. So Coach Schultz had this vision of what he wanted to see, and we've just kind of kept pushing that forward, particularly the weight room piece, and making sure that guys are competitive and getting after it in the weight room.
What would you say the percentage is? Because, the sports, beyond football even, it's ridiculous. Mason and I, and a lot of the guys in the office, we talk about this all the time. You guys are a factory, whether it's baseball, whether it's boys or girls lacrosse. We can go on and on with the athletics at Madison. And I know the great John Kenny would maybe say it's all just great admin. And I say that with I joke around. I love John, an old friend of mine. But you could say the youth sports, but what would you say the percentage for your football program is of guys who are just football guys? Roughly year to year, if you had to give me a percentage.
Yeah. I would say probably 30%.
Wow.
Yeah.
So 70% doing something else.
Yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
And you think, and you think, how do you think that impacts the weight room? You think that they still find a way? A lot of the guys, I know some can't.
I'll tell you, you talk about the success of the other programs in our building. We have made a commitment as a school that the weight room it's not just football that's in there lifting. So for us, for example, in the winter time, we don't get the weight room till 6:30 p.m. because baseball's in there, lacrosse is in there, track is in there, our crew team is in there. Everybody's got an hour, in the weight room. So all our sports have really committed to kind of that personal development. So I don't worry, like my baseball players, when it's the winter time and they're going to lift with baseball leading into the spring, I don't worry that they're not lifting. I understand that they're getting their stuff done with the baseball team. Lacrosse is the same way. That they're going to go in the weight room and they're going to lift. And when I get them back, they're going to be competing in another sport. They're going to be stronger. They're going to, and I ask them to, a couple of metrics. I ask them to let me know what they weigh, and we're going to track that. And, we'll make sure we're getting the strength gains that we're trying to get. But if they're off competing and doing something else, I'm fine with that. So it's just the kids that aren't doing something. I want to make sure they are in the weight room with us. So we probably have, 40 kids in the wintertime that are in the weight room regularly. We try to go 4 days a week. And then we've got all the other kids that are playing lacrosse and wrestling or, any of the other sports they're lifting with their teams. So we've done a really good job, like I said, as a athletic program of establishing the fact that the weight room is important. So I don't worry that our kids aren't doing stuff if they're not with me, as long as they're with another coach doing what they need to do.
It's interesting you bring that up because we got done talking with Coach Parker and his two sons, and they said the same thing about West Springfield. They were like, we can't get in the weight room until a certain time because everybody at the school is utilizing the weight room.
Yeah.
I think uh, uh, we're in a day and age now. If you're not going to commit to being in the weight room as a school to making sure all your athletes are getting better, I think you're putting yourself at a huge disadvantage.
Yeah. I mean, I think, football in particular, bigger, faster, stronger usually wins, I mean, that's physics. So, anything that, and I think, being a faster athlete, being a stronger athlete is going to translate to any sport that you want to play. So that's kind of the message that we give to the lacrosse guys and the baseball guys. I tell them, if you want to play lacrosse in college, that's great. Look up the Division I schools and read off the roster and the size of these kids that are playing Division I lacrosse. It's not going to hurt you to get in the weight room. There's not a lot of 140-pound Division I lacrosse players out there. So, if that's what you want to do. So there is some flexibility that I have to have because I know a lot of these kids, football is not their number one sport, but I need them because they're great athletes and they're going to be good football players. So I'll work with them if they've got other sports that they want to do, but they need to be committing themselves to being the best athlete they can be. And that's going to help them in any of the sports that they do.
Yeah. Now in the weight room, I mean, do you guys, because I know some schools, I'll use Marshall as an example. Actually, you being a Marshall guy too, coincidentally, but I know for years, I don't know if they do it anymore, but Ryan Wood, he would kind of manage a lot of the after school program. He was one of the best in the county at doing it. Do you guys have just one guy that happens to do all the sports, or is every sport every coach kind of does their own thing in the weight room?
Yeah. So we have, we do our own thing in the weight room. Baseball does their own thing in the weight room. There is a group, Quantum Movement is a Vienna-based training outfit. They work with some of the teams. Girls basketball has their own specific trainer who comes in and works with them. But most of the teams man the weight room themselves.
Awesome. So there's a couple things that you do outstanding. We've been watching now for I've been for 2 years, right? We've been watching everybody would do. One, you guys tackle probably as good as any team I've ever seen. I've been in 3 different states, so I've seen a lot of football. Right now, I've been in Southern California. I've seen everything. You guys tackle. I mean, I remember I remember what Tampa years ago they said that the difficult with Tony Dungy's Tampa's defense is that even if you caught the ball, you were going down there. Right. There was no rack, there was no anything else, and they once they got a hold of you, you went down. And it seems like you guys do that as good or better than anybody I've seen. Period. And like I said, I've been a lot of places. Without I guess if you don't want to spill the secret sauce, what is your how do you guys emphasize that? How do you guys get that to where all your kids just tackle, perfect tackling, everything through there?
Yeah. Well, we practice it a lot. We got a really good defensive staff that coaches that a lot. That's a real point of emphasis. One of the things that we've really focused on is the way football has changed. We really don't take people to the ground very often in practice. So we don't even wear practice pants. We'll wear girdles, but we wear shorts and shoulder pads and a helmet. But every tackle we make, we're not taking them to the ground, but we're driving, we're wrapping up and we're driving for 5 yards. So we're moving our feet. We're staying square. We really focus on that. And we do commit on Tuesdays. We've got a kind of a tackling circuit that we go through every Tuesday with the defense. Everybody who's got a chance to the kickers go out there. Anybody who's got a chance to tackle somebody at some point goes through this, and the coaches, really hammer home their points of emphasis. But it is, one of the things that we kind of made a decision on when we evaluate the talent on our team is the fact that, we may not always be the most athletic, particularly in the secondary compared to some of these teams, but in order for us to be a really good defense, we have got to tackle. And that's just a point of emphasis, something we hammer down. Every time we watch film, we're watching the way the guys tackle. We're making sure they're getting in good position. We're making sure they're running their feet. And another point that we really emphasize is that everybody's got to get to the football, and we need help. It's not one guy. Never assume that somebody's going to make the tackle. So I think our coaches do a great job of holding the kids accountable. I think the kids do a great job of kind of holding the other kids accountable and making sure that we're playing as hard as we can. I think if you turn on the tape of our defense over the last, 8 or 10 seasons, and you run through any clip, you're going to find 7, 8 hats at the football pretty much on every play. And And if they're not going to play for us very long. I mean, that's just the way it works. And we've gotten to a point where that's kind of the expectation. That's the standard on our defense. We're going to be physical, we're going to be fast, and we're going to get to the football, and we're going to tackle. So if you're not a great tackler, you got to practice that and work that. But our coaches do a really good job of kind of teaching that and working kids through it and kind of progression, so that, a kid that's new to football needs to take a little bit of time to learn how to do it. So we do spend a lot of time, even with our freshman kids, with the varsity staff, going down there and teaching the kids who have never played football before about how we want to tackle and how we want to do it. And then our freshman staff does a great job of kind of teaching. So by the time they get to us, they've got a great fundamental, tackling technique, and then we can just coach them up. And then it's just a matter of making sure everybody's giving us the effort they need to give.
And I think that kind of leads into the other thing I think you do a fantastic job with doing. I mean, you guys aren't small by any stretch of imagination, but you and I think we've all walked on the field and watched a team walk off the bus. You're like, holy spokes! They're just big and athletic, and you think to yourself, man, these guys look like men. Whereas you guys, for the most part, look like high school kids. You look like good high school kids. I mean, you guys put together. You guys obviously do some time in the weight room, but so you guys just kind of get all the talent out of your kids that you possibly can. I marvel at the fact that you do that. Like I said, we walked on, and I remember we saw your offensive line, and it wasn't like you're walking around with 6'3", 300-pound guys up front. You have guys who look like just like your regular high school linemen, but your ability to do that. So I think again that's another thing you guys do a fantastic job of doing.
Well, thank you. I think a lot of credit goes to the kids. I think there's there's kind of an expectation and a standard about how we want to practice, and really it's got to be kid driven. It can't be the coach sitting there screaming at everybody to come on. It's so much more powerful when the kids and the older kids set the example about how we're going to practice, how we're going to do things. Obviously everybody wants to have fun, and that's a big part of playing football, playing high school sports, but there is a time that you got to work. And we really try to hammer down on the fact that every time you've got a rep, every time you've got an opportunity to step on the field, it's a chance to, catch a coach's eye, get an opportunity, impress your teammates, all that stuff. So I feel like our kids play real hard, and I feel like they work really hard to put themselves in a position to be successful. I think most of our kids have a really good grasp of what we're trying to do, both offensively and defensively. So they put themselves in good positions. And so we try not to have a lot of wasted movement, a lot of wasted steps. I think we've gotten by with some undersized offensive linemen because their technique is really good and they know what they're supposed to do. Excuse me. I think, we've had some undersized defensive linemen who, again, are quick, and they have just a motor that doesn't stop, and they can be trouble that way. So we've been real blessed. I think our coaches do a great job, but I think our kids really kind of buy into what we're trying to do. And I think that in itself goes the furthest.
Well, I'll give you an example of something that, Mason and I, noticed watching the Oscar Smith game this year. You could say the year before too, but the tackling. That's something that, when we were analyzing the Oscar Smith and a game later, we're like, can their opponent, at North Stafford, could North Stafford, make those tackles? Because Oscar Smith was so used to those short passes becoming touchdowns, right, and they weren't against you guys. You guys were making those tackles where they normally break it off and go 40 yards, 30 yards, 60 yards, whatever it might be. And that's, we just walked away saying, that tackling is what allowed, defensively that game, to be where it was. Yeah,
well, I think that kind of goes back to the talk about playing team defense and understanding what your responsibilities are, what your angles are, where your help is. That all goes into the tackling. It'd be great if everybody could make every tackle, but there's areas where you just can't miss a tackle. If you're a corner, you can't give up the outside. You got to make sure that if you miss, you're turning them back in where your help can come. And again, everybody's got to get to the football because you got to assume that guy's going to break a tackle and he's going to need some help. So I think toward the end of the year last year, we were a really good tackling team. And I think for us, the way we play defense, we've got to take away kind of those short plays that turn into big plays. Because, we oftentimes don't necessarily lack a little bit of the athleticism to stay with some of those guys on some of the deep stuff. So we got to get to the quarterback quick, and we got to tackle them when they throw the ball quick.
How many, and serious question here, how many new coaches, right, in the county? Because Mason and I, again, we talk about this all the time. And I guess it all depends on how, and I'm sure you seem like an inviting, welcoming guy. How many new coaches reach out to you in the county the last several years and say, hey, can I come and, in the off season, right, observe a green day, spring practice, whatever it might be, just to kind of get a feel for what are you guys doing right? Do you get a lot of that?
I've had a few coaches reach out and do that. It's more.
So I would.
Yeah, I think
if I was a coach, I'd reach out to you.
When we get into the playoffs, and coaches are kind of finished with
Playoffs,
they can come out to watch practice. We've had coaches come out and watch practice. And I've talked to, several young coaches who anybody who wants to ask me questions, I'm open to doing that. I mean, I just feel the role of a high school coach beyond just the X's and O's is so important, and we need good people in those positions helping to influence young people as they kind of make this transition. So I'm certainly open to talking to anybody.
Yeah, that's awesome.
You talked about your staff, and I know Dash is doing on this. How many coaches do you have in the building over at Madison?
One.
All right, I'll see you guys later. All right, so Coach, here's the deal. Here's the. I'm fascinated. You guys, you defy, and you know this already, but you all the things that everyone talks about, right? As this is what I need to be successful. I need coaches in the building. And we can go on and on with some of the things that we need, right? I need guys not playing other sports. I need them all here, damn it. All these things. I can't coach another sport because I got to be there. I got to live there for football. I mean, check. You're coaching baseball. You're enjoying a life outside of football, obviously. You got kids, 70% of them doing something else. No one's in the building. It'll be anarchy.
Well, I do. So I said one. We've had two. One of our coaches just stepped down. So I've had two in the building, but I give them certain responsibilities. If you ask me, I do think it's important to have coaches in the building. I think it is
100%. I don't want to downplay that. It is.
Yeah. I think, we have kind of gotten to a point where we're getting enough participation that it's not as critical, but the number one benefit to me that I see with having coaches in the building is grabbing a kid walking down the hall saying, son, you ought to try football. I mean, you're a good looking body walking down the hall. Let's get you out there, just recruiting kids to do that and kind of hyping the program to the kids that are in the building, recruiting the building. And then, obviously there's things, college coaches, when they come in, we've got to set up, we got programs to kind of set that up. Doing kind of the administrative stuff, if there's a question administratively, who's going to answer that question during the day, POs and all that stuff that has to just, the parts of running the program. I do lean on the guys who are in the building a little bit more than probably most coaches would to handle some of that stuff. But we have been able and been fortunate to kind of get by without doing that. Our school's kind of taken the approach that, teaching and athletics are kind of a little bit separate, and Madison is a place that people want to teach, and there's a lot of competition for those teaching jobs. The PE department, they coach other sports besides football, so they are coaches in the building, but it's just hard to find a spot to get coaches in there. So our administration's worked really hard at trying to get the guys that we've got in there and get them in position to help, and we have a lot of support from our admin. I don't want it to sound like they're not doing everything they can to help the program, but it's just a tough place to get teachers in the building. It's just a high demand spot for teachers. So that is something that we've kind of figured out how to do. It wouldn't be my recommendation for somebody starting a new program or trying to build something up, but we figured out how to make it work.
What's crazy though is, and I assume I'm the oldest person on here, but you would assume that if you're a teacher at Madison, that you would want to be part of the Madison football team. Like you'd want to do that. I talk with Dash all the time and about it. When I was in high school, I think we had one walk-on coach. We had one walk-on coach. Everybody else was a coach. We had social studies teachers and PE teachers and English teachers and staff assistants. They were all on. That blows my mind that you don't have at least a few. I'm a social studies teacher, so I can talk about my ilk. A couple of social teachers being like, "Hey, I played football.
Yeah,
you guys are really good. I think I'd like to go do something about winning." I'd like to be part of that. I think that maybe also the spot we're in, and kind of to your point, a lot of times people come into teaching early on and they say I'm going to coach, and they do it for a couple of years, and they're like, okay, am I locked in? Yeah, I'm locked in. Yeah, I think I'm good on this, as opposed to wanting to be part of the fabric, and especially with an athletic program like Madison.
Well, I don't know. I mean, I bet you guys have your. Well, go ahead, because I was going to ask a follow up to that. But go ahead.
Sure. So I think one of the reasons it works for us the way we've got it now, and maybe doesn't work for somebody who's a teacher necessarily, is, we practice in the evening a lot, because our guys. So Mondays and Tuesdays we practice 5:30. So a teacher who's already taught the whole day is not really anxious to wait around for us till 5:30 for us to come practice. It's not necessarily conducive to that. And a lot of the teachers, as you guys know, don't live just 5 minutes down the road. It's a commitment to go back home and then come back to the school. So we've kind of figured out how to make it work with the guys who, have a 9 to 5, and then we can massage some of the other days if we have to. But that's probably the reason that we don't have a huge number of teachers on our staff. It's just the way we've set up our practices and kind of working around everybody's schedule.
Well, do you guys, because I know you've seen everywhere else with the other coaches in the area, it's a tough time to find coaches.
Yeah.
In general, whether in the building or out, and especially in. And but do you guys? I look at the lists of the schools that are hiring and need help, and I know sometimes some people don't put it up there because they see it as a badge of honor not to list jobs. I don't see Madison up there very often. So, I mean, is it the kind of thing where you're one of the rare ones that people apply for jobs with you guys?
Well, we haven't done a ton of hiring, frankly. We've got kind of the core of the staff that's been together since 2012. So, we've got probably 8 or 9, maybe more coaches that have been there that long. And then we've been very fortunate. We've had coaches that have played for us kind of come back, young guys who want to kind of help the program. So, and then we've got a freshman staff that is a bunch of young guys, and they kind of are their own entity. And so we've got 7 or 8 freshman coaches who kind of run their own program. I mean, I oversee it, and I give some input, and I tell them how I want it run, but they run that. And then our JV and varsity program, we do everything together. So we practice together. We only have one field at Madison, so we're sharing that with field hockey. We're sharing that with band. So we got to be
one field over there.
Yeah, just
really?
one
It's
field.
it's another thing on the list of things that defy
Yeah.
all the odds. I'm making this list.
So, when the freshmen start playing their games, and their game starts at 5:30 or 5:45 on Thursday, we got to be done with practice by 5:15 on Thursday. And a lot of times we're having the other teams warm up like in the parking lot while we're finishing up our last little bit of practice. So it is a little bit tough. There's some logistics that have to be done, but it forces us to be organized. We only have, 2.5 hour time block on the field. So we've got to make sure that when we hit that field, we're taking care of everything that we've got to do. And we practice the JV and varsity, all the coaches, all the kids together. So we'll go through all our individual and all our, small group stuff as one unit. And then when we go to team, or we'll break into kind of JV and varsity when they do that stuff. So half the practice, all the coaches are coaching all the kids, and then we'll break into our individual stuff. And really, we just decide the JV is going to be, most all the 10th graders, and then anybody who's not in the too deep depth chart, they can play JV at that time. So that's how we establish who's going to be our JV team for that week.
So actually, you just ran something over. You have 7 or 8 freshman coaches?
Yes. And I'm going to tell you that, to me, is probably the most important thing that we've done.
I hope everyone's listening. I hope everyone out there is listening to this.
And none of those guys teach. So we've got 7 or 8 kids, or young men who they've been coaching together. They were VYI coaches. They coached through VYI probably 7 or 8 seasons, and they were looking to kind of jump into the high school. So we took the opportunity to hire them. They've been with us 2 full seasons, and it's great because the last couple of years they're bringing kind of a new youthful energy to the program. The kids are excited to be a part of it. But we've got enough coaches there that if we've got 50 or 60 kids, that we're not just coaching 12 kids and then everybody else is watching them. We have enough coaches there that can develop kids. And freshman football, I think, is one of the most difficult levels to coach because you're going to have kids who have played 7 or 8 seasons, and then you're going to have kids who don't know how to buckle their chin strap, and you got to kind of get everybody up to speed and ready. There's going to be kids from all different sizes. Some of the kids are 200 pounds, some of the kids are 90 pounds, and you got to teach them how to survive safely. Having this young, youthful, energetic, keeping it cool coaching staff that can develop our kids. Again, our varsity guys help them out a little bit, but for the most part, once the season starts, they've got them. They practice in the evening like a youth team. I mean, they're there at 5:30 every night because all these guys work. The kids go home after school. The parents bring them back, but they're up there, and it's been a great benefit to our program because really I tell our freshman coaches, we want to win as many games as we can, but to me, you're being judged by how many kids come back to play next year. And if we can keep classes of 25 to 35 kids who are dedicated to football, we're going to be able to replenish the team every year. It's not just that we're going to come out and have a great season and then have to bring a young group up for 2 or 3 years until they're good. If we've got 30 kids in a class, we can backfill that every year. And that's what we've been kind of gotten into the point. So the development on the freshman level and keeping the kids excited about football and selling it to our young guys has been really beneficial for us.
Yeah, I think you point just because, I tell people all the time, as long as I'm coaching, your freshman class, you probably bleed 10 to 20% of kids every year. And not because of tons of reasons, right? They get a girlfriend, they get a job, they decide they don't want to play football anymore, they decide they don't want to play this anymore. There's a million reasons. And if you can minimize that as much as possible, especially from your freshman to sophomore year, right? Because that's usually when you bleed the most. Usually it's the sophomore year. If you can keep them around and keep them invested, if you can get them through their sophomore year, they'll usually hang out their junior and senior year regardless. If they're 2 years in of football. So I think just what you're saying is 100% correct.
I would agree with you. I would think the number is probably even larger. I think the jump from 9 to 10, from grade 9 to 10, you're probably losing 30% of the kids that played freshman football. And then you're probably bleeding, 4 or 5% each year as they kind of move along. But exactly. I mean, the retention and having the kids, particularly, the new kids, it takes a year to learn how to play football. It's just, you're not going to be successful just most kids are not going to be successful just walking out there unless you're a special athlete that they can throw the ball to and you just run away from everybody else. But anybody who's got to learn how to block and tackle, that's going to take some time. And, having kids who have enough buy-in or excited enough about the program that they're willing to put that year in of kind of learning and taking the bumps and bruises and want to come back. Those are the kids that, when they're juniors and seniors, they're going to play the roles that aren't the glamorous roles, but they're the roles that just are absolutely necessary for you to be successful. I mean, we talk about it in our program a lot. I don't know, we've been pretty blessed the last couple of years to have some pretty special athletes, but year in and year out, I don't know that we're, player 1 through 5, all that much better or even the same as a lot of the teams that we play. But athletes 6 through 40 is where we really kind of make the difference. We've got a lot of kids who have just made themselves really good football players because they've bought in to learning what we do. They've bought into making themselves as big and strong as they can. And they're just good, strong high school guys who are willing to do whatever the team needs. And you need those guys. Not everybody can score every time, they're out on the field. You need guys who are going to block and you need guys who are going to tackle. And we've done a really good job of kind of fostering that in our school.
You nailed it. I mean, I've told Mesa this. There's times, watching you guys and an opponent that you might beat soundly. And I say, Mesa, right now, who would you take in a flag game?
Right.
Madison or those guys. Sometimes those guys is the answer. And we know damn well that that's a flag game we're talking about because we know it in real life. There you go. There's that 6 through 40. The better tackling, the better blocking, the tenacity, the hard work, the football players. That's when that shines.
Yeah, we're not a great 7-on-7 team. We don't do that really well. But I think, when you play 11-on-11, there are things that we do really well as a program for high school football. And we just have kids that just love high school football.
Yeah. The freshman group, I did want to ask you about that so who's the senior guy? Because you got me, I'm really, it takes a lot of trust too from admin because just being around the block, a lot of times, and by the way, like I said, I mentioned John Kenny earlier. Love Andrew Baird. He's awesome. So you guys have also been blessed with great admin over there.
There's no question. No question.
Because a lot of times I know some of the admin get a little bit like, we get this roster full of young guys coaching these players. So who's the I guess the head coach or the senior guy on the freshman staff?
Yeah, Artie Pickett is the head coach. And then he's got his brothers who coach with him, and then he's got some other guys that he's kind of grown up with. They all went to Westfield. They played football at Westfield, and then they got involved in VYI, and then they've been with us. So I don't really even know how old Artie is. He's a real successful attorney.
Okay, so he's not like a 20-year-old then.
I bet he's probably in his early 30s.
Oh wow, man, good for him. Good for him.
Yeah, no, listen. Artie's got his head on his shoulders. He's a great model for our young guys. But he does a great job with the freshman group. And to your point, the administrative support that we have at Madison, I've never been anyplace else, but I've never gone in and asked for something that they didn't figure out how to make it work. And obviously we're doing some things that are a little bit unorthodox with the time that we practice and the way we do things. And we've never had any pushback on that. Miss Calvert, who's our principal, is at all the games. She's super supportive. She really believes that athletic success, particularly in the fall, kind of bleeds into the morale of the entire school and kind of the attitude that everybody takes. And she's supportive of all the sports, but and then obviously Mr. Kenny was there for a long time. He kind of my staff is not necessarily the typical Fairfax County employee staff. So there was some breaking in that Mr. Kenny had to do. There was a lot of, sit downs and talking us through how this is going to work as an educational piece. And some of the personalities that we have, I think it says a lot for the administration. And I think it says a lot for our coaches that we were able to kind of blend our personalities and the requirements of Fairfax County and what they're trying to accomplish together. But we've had great admin support. Now, Mr. Baird has taken over as the athletic director. What's great is I coached Andrew when he was at Madison. So
that's awesome.
He hasn't held that against me yet, but so we have a really good relationship there, obviously. And yeah, it's been super supportive. Anything I've ever needed, they've kind of figured out how to get done.
And it speaks both ways, like highly of you guys as well, because it takes that trust, right? Both ways. I mean, and they trust you guys.
Well, I think, one of the things that was great was Mr. Kenny, his two sons played for us.
Yeah.
I think, he might have had some reservations about the way we do things and our style, but the way his boys reacted to the coaching that we got and kind of what he saw and kind of the growth that I hope football contributed to his boys growing up through high school. I think he really realized that what we were doing was helping these guys, and he liked the results, and it fell in line with his vision of what scholastic sports should bring to the high school experience. And obviously we want to win as many football games as we can, but I do think that in the end of the day, we're trying to help these guys mature and work their way through high school and be confident and develop some skills that are going to help translate them as they move on into the next chapter of their life. And if we can win some football games while doing that, that's a great accomplishment.
I'd say that John learned a lot from me. We worked together and we shared an office together.
He's actually mentioned that to me. He said, I think everything I've learned.
I'm going to text him later. That's hilarious.
Yeah. So coming into next season, who are some guys? Who are some guys on the team that because you guys keep on reloading.
Well, we're gonna have a lot of new faces for sure. I think we graduate everybody but 3 guys on our defense. John Henry Lehman is a defensive end. He's the only guy on the defensive line that's coming back. He's been a stalwart there for us, and he's been a real leader in the weight room, kind of bringing these young guys along. Max Monticelli is an inside linebacker. He's coming back, and then we've got a couple of offensive guys. Nick Harms is a corner. He's the other guy returning on the defense. So we got those 3 guys to kind of build around, and then we're going to be piecing in with younger guys on the offense. Got a couple offensive linemen that are returning, but we lose quarterback and both the running backs who were there. Will Smoot's coming back. He played wide receiver for us. Most of the time, we'll probably move him to the running back a little bit more, but we got a couple.
He tore it up at the end of the year, Coach. He tore it
Will's
up.
a great athlete. Will's a great athlete. He's a real special kid. He played for us a little bit as a sophomore, got his feet wet. This year, I thought he just had a coming out party. I think he just gained a lot of confidence, but he's a really talented kid. We're going to give him the ball a bunch in the backfield this year. Hopefully try to use him a little bit like we used Dominic, move him around and try to create some matchup problems. But we've got some other kids. We've got two brothers, twin brothers who moved in last year from the Philippines. They were rugby players, never had played football before in their lives. They came out, we put them in the backfield, and we had a couple of injuries. They ended up playing in the Stonebridge game, never having played football before. And they played Stonebridge at Lake Braddock. So they're both staying. Their father's military. They're going to stay for one more year. So we hope to get some play out of those boys. And then we're returning a couple of wide receivers. We lost Anthony Voinis, who was a big part of what we've done the last couple of years. But we've got Harry Lewis coming back at tight end and a couple of wide receivers that we like. And then we got to have a competition at quarterback again. We have a couple of guys. We have a junior this year who'll be a senior next year, and then a sophomore who'll be a junior, who both kind of competed with Andrew Rowan this year for that spot. Andrew won that competition, but both those boys will be there. They're kind of chomping at the bit to get their shot. So a lot of new faces, a lot of coaching will have to be done. Kind of same kind of thing. We'll have some growing pains early on as those boys kind of work their way into varsity football, but a lot of kids that have worked really hard and have been kind of waiting their turn. Even last year we had an older team, but we just didn't have much experience. And I think that's kind of the way, we talk about refilling some of these spots. That's the way it's got to be. We had a bunch of kids last year who had been JV players the year before, and they were huge contributors to us this year. So, again, it goes to kind of the program and developing kids at each level and making sure that our JV guys are up to speed. When they get their opportunities, they're ready to step in. So should be an interesting off season for us, interesting preseason. Just to kind of see how all this stuff shakes out. But I'm excited to see. We've been working hard and excited to see which boys step up and take some of those spots.
Yeah, that's a credit to your staff too, because your quarterback this year, he's a baseball first guy, right? Like baseball was his.
So he was a baseball player. He didn't play baseball the last. I guess he finished his last season was a sophomore year.
Okay.
So, but he's a guy. He was the backup quarterback. He played JV as a sophomore. Had a great JV season. He was the backup quarterback to Cale Yates as a junior, and he didn't get a lot of time there. He didn't really want. He thought he had kind of done what he needed to do on JV, but he didn't get to play much as a junior. So it was a big jump for him to kind of get that varsity game speed. So it took a little while for him, but I couldn't be more proud of the season that he had, and really. Not just the performances that he had, particularly toward the end of the year where he really started playing some really good football, but just as a leader and kind of, Cale was such a personality, such a dominant kind of force in our program, as a leader, as a worker, as everything, a competitor. And for Andrew to have to step in and fill those shoes, he did it his own way. He didn't try to be Cale Yates, which would have been difficult because he wouldn't have been able to do that. He tried to lead as Andrew Rowan, and I thought the kids bought into him. They supported him. We had a lot of new offensive linemen. Andrew was getting beat up early on, and we kind of took accountability. If Andrew's going to make this jump, we got to do a better job of playing around him. And obviously having Matt Weiler to lean on is nice, and it gave us some opportunities to make some plays in the passing game because we got some one-on-one opportunities. Again, you talk about Will Smoot and Anthony Voinis, having opportunities to make plays because everybody had to commit so many guys to stopping Matt. But we'll play a different style of football this year. We're not going to be able to hand it off to two big guys and just let them pound it. But it'll be, some of the same stuff, but a lot of new faces.
Well, one, my guess is you'll be able to run the football. I can't see Madison not being able to run the ball. But two, I think to Warren's credit, that's a guy who waited his turn, right? He didn't. A lot of guys in there by the time you get to junior year, like I'm not playing, they might quit, right? They might just kind of lose interest. I think, and that's again credit to your staff, right? To build a program where he's like, you know what, I'm gonna sit here, I'm gonna wait, I'm gonna bide my time, I'm gonna wait my turn, and when I get my chance in there, then I'm gonna play.
Yeah, well, I think you're right. I think particularly in today's kind of instant gratification, looking for the feedback now. It's unusual to have kids who are willing to do that. I do think it's a credit to the staff, but I think it's a credit to the kids and kind of the example that they've set. We've had 3 or 4 teams now, maybe more, where we've had this kind of turnover where kids have played JV as juniors. They may not have liked that, but they've done that for their development and for the betterment of the team. And then when it's their opportunity as seniors, they jump in and take that spot and they don't give it up. I think it means a lot to guys to have that spot because they know how hard they've worked to achieve that. And I think it also kind of, we talk about, if you want something, you got to work for it. Nobody's going to hand you anything. We want competition at all these positions. It pushes everybody. And I think for a lot of these kids, Vienna kids in particular, a lot of these guys have really good lives. I mean, their parents are successful. They're going to be successful whether they play high school football or not, a lot of them. But it does teach them, that if they really want something, they got to work at it and they got to push for it and they got to have, and it's the consistency of showing up every day. It's not just let me go in there and work real hard on Monday and then bag it for a couple of days. It's, stacking days on top of each other, coming in, committing yourself to something and seeing how good you can be. And the fact that once they make that commitment, it's a lot harder to walk away from, and Andrew, I think he saw, there was no question that Kale was the starter and he was going to play. But Andrew realized, if I keep grinding and I keep doing what I'm supposed to do, I'm going to get an opportunity and it's worth it to me to keep working and be ready for that when my time comes. And to his credit, he did the work and he was ready and he grabbed that opportunity when it was presented. And, as a coach, that's where you really kind of say, yes, this kid, what he got out of high school football is going to help him in anything else that he wants to do for the rest of his life. He understands if he wants something, he's got to go get it and he's got to work. And it may not happen on his timing and it may not happen, immediately. You got to just keep stacking days and give yourself an opportunity to be prepared when your opportunity presents itself. So that's kind of what we're building our program on now is that message. And I think it resonates with enough of the guys that they're willing to wait their turn. And it's worth it to them to be a part of it and to put the work in and to see how good they can be.
Amen. I mean, you nailed it. When people say, why football? I mean, I'm going to clip that and then share with people because,
yeah. Well,
you summed it up really well.
Thank you. We have an offensive coordinator. We talk to the guys before every game in our room in there. And the offensive coordinator comes in and we go over, roll call and everybody. And then he has a chance to address the team. And he starts every week with high school football is the greatest game in the world. And like we started off this thing, I played baseball. I was a much better baseball player than I ever was a football player. And I think I learned a lot from playing baseball, but I just think there's things about high school football that you just don't get in any other sport. And I, of course I'm biased on that, but I just think for me personally, in my experience, I learned so much about myself. I learned a lot of things that I think have carried on through the rest of my life. And I've learned so much from my high school coaches that I'm trying to imprint on these guys that I'm working with now. And to me, I just think that it's such a vehicle, and it particularly in an area that we live in where, kids sometimes get things easy and sometimes things can just happen for them. To have them have to work for it and have them want it and to have them buy into something and believe in something, I think it's important. And I think, they're not going to remember necessarily all the games and all this stuff, but when they sit in the Vienna Inn, 20 years from now and they're chopping it up, they're going to remember their teammates. They're going to remember the stuff, the practices that they had and kind of the grind and all that. And that's what's great about Vienna, I think, is it's still got its own little town and people come back. And to me, there's no better, we talk about trying to make the playoffs. To me, there's nothing better than making the playoffs to get to Thanksgiving and seeing all the kids come home for Thanksgiving break and all the kids line up on the sidelines, from 2, 3, 4, 5 years ago. And I look down and I got 60 kids over there, that just the smile on my face to know that it still means something to these guys after they've gone and they've started, the rest of their lives, that to me is what it's all about. And that's why I think high school football is the greatest game.
Hell yeah. You nailed it. Again, good stuff, Coach. Before we let you go, we're going to see you at I know we got team camps coming up. We got maybe a 7-7, maybe. What do you got cooking for the later spring?
Yeah, so I don't know. We're working on trying to put together a 7-on-7, but those quarterbacks that I talked about, are two backup quarterbacks. One's a lacrosse player, one's a soccer player. Our freshman quarterback's a baseball player. So I don't know that they're going to be available to do the spring 7-on-7. You know, it's tough to play 7-on-7 when you don't have somebody who could throw the ball to everybody else. Or we may just enter a defensive team and tell the other team we'll punt every time we get the ball. But so we're trying to do that. We're gonna do the Westfield team camp in June. And
That's a good one.
yeah, so we'll see. You know, in years past, you know, our lacrosse team and our baseball team and our soccer teams have done well. If they're still in the playoffs, we're not going to have those guys. So we'll take the guys who are available, and we'll head on over there and do the best we can. We've always enjoyed. We've been to Fairfax the last 7 or 8 years, and always got a lot out of that. Trey ran a great camp, and we're hoping to get kind of the same kind of work. Gives everybody just kind of an introduction to the football season and get everything kicked off for the summertime to make sure everybody's locked in and ready to go. And we'll start. We usually try to do our green days. You know, once the weather warms up. I don't want to be out there when it's freezing cold. I don't know that we accomplish anything. So, you know, after spring break, maybe April and May, we try to do a couple. We have to go before school because everybody's using the field. You know, we only got one field, so soccer, boys and girls lacrosse are going to use the field all. So we got to go before school. So we'll probably try to get 8 or so green days in. And that's mostly just conditioning, you know, football-based conditioning stuff. But again, we'll run the weight room and our off-season conditioning program 4 days a week for the rest of until season starts. So the kids are working hard, and we're excited about it.
Good stuff, Coach. Hey, thanks for joining us. This was very informative. I didn't know a lot of this, and like I said, I got my checklist here. I'm making it, and you guys keep doing your thing. Keep defying all the odds. And you guys are so successful, and it's fun to watch. It really is fun to watch.
I appreciate that. I will say, you know, everybody becomes a much better coach when you got much better players. And we've been really blessed to have really good football players, high school football players. We may not have, you know, all the Division I guys, but we've got guys who are really good high school football players. And it's been a real pleasure of mine to coach those guys. You know, I can't think of one kid that I didn't enjoy coaching since I've been there. And, you know, it's a real credit to what they've done and kind of the mindset that they've created. And like I said, the standard that they hold each other to. So been real blessed for sure.
And now you got a Penn State quarterback, Coach. So
how
there you
cool
go.
is that? I mean, that to me, and Connor Berry is absolutely the perfect example for my young guys and what we're talking about. You know, Connor never played quarterback until he got to high school. He had never played quarterback. So he made himself a quarterback. And obviously we don't throw the ball 40 times a game. So he was a great quarterback for us. He is what he's done since he's left for our program. He comes back every break, every time he's home. He's in the weight room. He's showing the young kids. He's calling our guys to come out and throw with them. The work ethic that kid has and kind of the position he's put himself in, he's earned everything that he's gotten from this. And when he went to CNU, we knew that he was going to be special, but I didn't know that he'd be as special as he was. And then the fact that he just keeps grinding and this opportunity presented himself. And again, we talk about being prepared for the opportunities when they're there. All Connor's done since he's left Madison is work. I mean, the kid is 100% football. Every decision he makes is based around how it's going to impact his football career. And, you know, obviously we're cheering for him and the success he had at Christopher Newport. And now to see him go to Penn State and have an opportunity right now, you know, the kid that they've got penciled in to be the one isn't in school yet. Connor's doing all the reps with the number ones. He's getting an opportunity to play with the number one guys there. He's getting feedback. Awesome. And, you know, I wouldn't bet against the kid. I think if he had to end up, they asked me, I had a show call me from up there to ask me a little bit about him. I said, listen, here's what you're going to get. If there's an opportunity or there's an, God forbid, Beck gets hurt and Connor Berry has to go into the game, you can guarantee he's going to be mentally prepared and ready to go. And he's not going to be scared of the moment, and he's going to be ready to play. So, you know, whether he can do it physically or not, you know, that's just what happens in a football game. But he's going to know what to do mentally. He's going to be prepared. He's going to be locked in, and he's going to give you everything he's got. So we hold him up to all our young guys. We've been so blessed. Like I said, Connor, Cale Yates, these guys that we've had who have been Dominic Nicely, guys who have been leaders in our program, have just set the tone for what it's supposed to look like. And they've showed these young guys, you know, it just doesn't work doesn't stop. You want it, you got to keep going. So we're so proud of Connor. I can't wait to see what he accomplishes, but how cool is that?
That's
Well,
awesome.
and college football is a business now, right? They're not bringing a guy in because he's a good guy.
Right.
College football is a total business now. If they're bringing him in because they're like, if we need someone to play, he can play.
So they have Chase McSorley up there as one of the coaches, and obviously he's kind of an undersized guy who he's super athletic and talented. Obviously, I'm not taking anything away from him, but I think he knows enough about football to see, the things that are important, and what a guy can bring to a team. And, if Connor's just a guy who contributes in practice, he's going to give you everything he's got in practice. He's going to make your defensive guys better because they got to work in practice. So he's going to bring something to the team that's going to be beneficial, whether he steps on the field or not. And I think Chase McSorley recognized those types of characteristics, probably being a similar type. I don't know him personally, but I'm sure just watching him play, he's that type of guy. I think he recognized those characteristics in Connor and realized that could be beneficial to even a program as great as Penn State.
Yeah, and I think also it's a great model because that is the model now for a lot of our kids that want to go play Division I football. And you're going to have to kind of show your stuff at Division III level, probably Division II, and then hopefully junior year, maybe senior year, you get that call.
Yeah, I mean, when Dominic was going to Coastal Carolina, I saw a press conference with the coach, and he pretty much said that, the guys that come in here and play immediately, we're not expecting them to be here more than 2 years. We're trying to recruit the best kids that we can. We're going to coach them up. We're going to help them. And that's almost the sales pitch for that level of football. Come here, play immediately. We'll help you in the weight room. We'll get you big and strong. We'll do all the things to help you progress. We'll get good tape and film that we can show, and hopefully we can help you boost into another situation. Now, I don't know how this works for all the educational piece of college football, but you're absolutely right. This is what college athletics is looking like now. And the levels, it's not just football. I think I certainly see it in baseball all the time. I mean, there are Division III programs that come in to recruit our kids whose sales pitch is come to us, play for 2 years. We'll help you get to a Division I program. And I don't, and even, they allow junior college now not to count against your eligibility. So that's another place where you can go to play and just try to continue. Because, football in particular, there's some late developers. There's some guys who, continue to work and get better. You don't want to write that off, but it's tough to sit on the bench, for 3 or 4 years at a program, not knowing whether or not you're ever going to go. So I don't know if it's right or wrong. It's just kind of the way it is now, but Connor's a great example of it working.
Yeah, no, it's amazing. Coach, thanks again for joining us. And we'll see you this spring at team camp or at one of the events. We'll definitely see you.
Yeah, well, like I say to you guys, every time I see you, I certainly appreciate you all doing this. It's great to promote high school football, and anytime you need me, I'm more than happy to come on.
Hey, appreciate it, Coach. All right, we'll talk soon. All right, welcome back. And that's it. That is the guy, Mesa.
Every coach. I need coaches in the building. They ain't got any coaches in the building. I need the field time. I need to be there.
No fields.
No fields.
You need weight room. You need everyone in the weight room.
Yeah, I need everyone in the weight room. No.
You don't get 70% of your guys in the weight room. They're all playing other sports.
That's crazy.
And the list goes on. Yeah. That's unbelievable. They defy everything.
But is that just because they have such a strong football culture now? That's just what they do.
Yeah, football culture is strong. Coach Casey and Vienna Youth, make sure we give a shout out to them.
Well, the other thing I think he really, I don't know how much we glossed over on it, but he really talked about the fact that the players now hold each other accountable. And I think that, you and I are educators, and the one thing that I remember, when I was taking my credentialing classes, that by the time they get to about middle school, peer, not the peer group, what I'm looking for, not peer pressure, but like the opinions of their peers matter so much more than the opinions of adults. And if the older kids, and we've seen this, right? I mean, we've seen when you don't have good leadership on a football team with the older kids, it bleeds into the younger kids.
Yep.
I mean, we've seen it. You and I have seen it. We've been part of places, or not part, but just we've seen that happen on football teams where you have I don't want to say toxic because they're kids, but
Right.
that you have kids who are not good role models for the younger ones, and they just go, "Oh, that's what we're supposed to do, right?
Right.
That's what's happening around here." And when you have now a culture, and the thing is, because they've had it for so many years, right? Everyone just assumes that that's how you're supposed to be. So I think that's the other big part of it, right? Is that
Right.
culture is built in so entrenched that the kids now hold each other accountable on that stuff.
And it's, we always say it about Madison. They don't have this roster of Tony Rojas and Eugene Asante and guys like that.
He has one Division I football player.
Right,
It's
right,
history one.
right. They just have a collection
Yeah,
of guys who can play. Don't get that wrong. First of all, right? Guys who can play. They just don't meet the matrix, right? They don't meet the height and the speed and the weight of these division, because that's what a lot of the Division I stuff is. If you put a lot of these football players, of the things they can do and how tough these guys are in the body of the guys that they're looking for, that a lot of that is measurements.
yeah,
The Division I guys, but these guys can play football.
yeah.
And they got a lot of them that can play football.
They got a lot of them play, and they go on to play other levels.
Yes.
But they have a lot of really, and the thing is, I think a lot of times you look for the measurables, and sometimes kids are just good high school football players. They just are. There's really good high school football players, and they can't play from this level because the speed gets too fast, the size gets too big. Like it just eventually just kind of overwhelms you.
Right.
I mean, although I remember a few years ago, they beat the hell out of Tony Rojas.
Yes, they did. They did.
They beat him up.
Old 11 angry men.
Yeah.
Every time he touched the ball.
And I think another thing Count said that I think really stood out to me. He was like, okay, 1 through 3, you're probably better than me.
Yep.
But you're not better than me 4 through 40.
Yep. That's it.
So, I mean, 1 through 3, and he talks about, right? He talks about, you get the every game, they're like, man, look at those kids, look at those kids, look at those kids.
Yeah.
And then by the end of the game, guess who's on top?
You and I need to get out there this summer. You and I talked about this. First day of hitting.
Yes.
First day of hitting. I want to do a live show, and I know we can't but I want to go over there, and I want to at least come back our next show after that and talk about what we saw.
Yeah, I think so. I'd love to see what that looks like.
Because they're doing something. They're not coming out. They're not pussyfooting around.
No.
On first day of hitting.
No, I agree.
Man. So kudos to them. Kudos to Coach Counts and that whole staff. And how about this? How about a guy who it almost seems like at first didn't even want to do the job?
He was a baseball guy.
Right.
He wasn't right. Nick Saban.
He's a baseball first guy.
The baseball guy.
Yeah. The other thing, and I've been talking to people about this, the world we live in, it's not the old days anymore, right?
Yeah.
My parents moved here in the 60s, okay? People I knew growing up here were lifers, okay? And it's not like that anymore. It's not. And families that can afford to come to this area, right? And then B, have kids who they feel are talented.
Yeah.
Talented enough to say, hey, I have a kid who's great at basketball. It doesn't mean you're moving into the high school. It could be the middle school or the elementary school, but you want to be in that feeder program.
The pyramid.
In the pyramid. And I have a kid who's great at basketball. I'm looking up Max Preps. Oh, that's South Lakes. That's a pretty impressive school for basketball. I think I want my kid to go there. And they go there. And if it's football, guess what's popping up, man? And you're moving to Nova?
Oh.
It's Madison. You and I spoke to parents from the Madison team 2 years ago that said exactly that. They were moving from other states, and they were like, we looked it up, and Madison was the place to be.
Right.
And that's the problem. You want to know one of the big problems for other schools in this area is that it's not the old days. People have a hard time thinking about this, but it's not the old days anymore. People who can afford to move to certain parts and who have the talented kids or who they feel are talented, and they want to put their kids in the best position to succeed, they're going to look up where are those places to go. And it's not going to be the teams that were losing. It's going to be the teams that were winning.
Right.
Just the way it is.
No, I agree.
Some things will never change.
Good old Bruce Hornsby, huh?
Yeah. Bruce Hornsby. So yeah. Good stuff. What a fun interview. And I know we've been talking about this interview for 2 weeks now, and I'm so happy we did it. We talked forever off camera too. What a good guy.
Yeah, no, I really enjoyed that.
Yeah. Yeah, buddy. Exciting times coming up, man. We got a big interview with Garfield's coach.
Edmonds.
But yeah, thank you, Coach Edmonds. Coming up next week. And we can now announce, Mesa, 2 weeks from today, the big announcement.
Oh, yeah.
Should we tease this, or should we just
We'll talk about it after.
talk about it again? No one's listening. No one's listening, anyways, Monty.
Anyway,
We'll talk about it now and then bring it up again. We will have Dr. Reed, the superintendent of Fairfax County Public Schools, right here. It's gonna be like Frost Nixon.
live and in living color.
That's right. It might win a Peabody.
Yeah,
I think Peabody's for news. No, maybe.
I think it is. Yeah,
Yeah, I think it is too.
Pulitzer. Pulitzer's for news, isn't it?
Well, yeah, Pulitzer Prize, but I think we could win a Peabody too. Right?
Yeah.
Peabody and Sherman. They're big history guys.
Yeah.
But yeah, buddy, it's gonna be good. So no rest, buddy. No rest here. No sleep till Brooklyn for us. Just turning them out, and that's the Friday before spring break, and we're really putting in the hours. We might get a raise.
Hopefully. I hope we won't get fired. Is what I hope.
It'll be fun. I mean, that's a sought after interview, buddy. People have tried, and many have tried, and they failed. But not here, not us.
Not us.
Oh, buddy. Well, it's been fun. Maybe next time we talk, that we will have gotten 95 degrees and then a blizzard afterwards.
Maybe. Who knows?
I just want nice weather for spring break.
I'm
I'm not going anywhere. I'm home.
Yeah.
And just like you, I just want to do yard work the whole time.
Yes.
Right.
Actually, I'm picking up a bunch of mulch
Oh, all right.
tomorrow. A bunch of mulch tomorrow.
So there's a bunch of mulch sales going on. You going to the Walmart mulch sale?
I'm going to
Costco?
one Lowe's.
Lowe's, okay. Okay.
80 bags.
80 bag. Holy smokes. You got a pickup truck for that?
No, I'll probably make multiple trips.
Jeez. Your back's going to be aching, buddy.
Yes, it will.
All right, buddy. Well, everybody, hope everyone enjoys the interview with Coach Counts from Madison. It's a great one. Check it out, share it, all that good stuff. And we'll see you guys next week with Coach Edmonds from Garfield, buddy. From Coach Mason, Coach Dash. We'll see you next time on All Hitches.
See ya.